Hello everybody and welcome to another One Stop Wrestling podcast. I'm Alex and today we're going to be looking back at some of the greatest matches in the career of Bret Hart. Dubbed the best there is, the best there was and the best there ever will be, the excellence of execution is one of the greatest professional wrestlers of all time, with an esteemed resume of fantastic matches. Bret was one of the first mainstream stars that was pushed to the main event because of his superior in-ring skill. One of the best technicians of all time and a truly believable competitor, Bret was a wrestling machine and pioneered the way for stars such as Kurt Angle and Daniel Bryan to also go on to achieve huge success. The Hitman had some acclaimed matches throughout his glittering career, and today we're going to narrow them down to a top 5. So without further ado, here are our top 5 matches in the career of Bret Hart. Because there are so many great Bret Hart matches, we'll throw in a few honourable mentions to start. First honourable mention is Bret Hart versus Owen Hart in a steel cage match for the WWE Championship at SummerSlam 1994. This is one of the best cage matches in history and very unlucky not to make the list. Brother versus brother, more on that later, and a rabid crowd made for an absolute spectacle. Second honourable mention is Bret Hart versus Steve Austin at Survivor Series 1996. This may even be the greatest match in Survivor Series history. Bret and Austin had incredible chemistry and this was the start of their epic feud for the months to come. And last honourable mention is Bret Hart versus Roddy Piper for the Intercontinental Championship at WrestleMania 8. A classic match of veteran putting the younger guy over. A very well-paced match which included a rare blade job from Bret. The finish is what is most remembered as Piper refused to hit Bret while the ref was down and Hart won the match, which was a big catalyst for his main event push. Now, on to the main list. Number 5, Bret Hart versus the 1-2-3 Kid for the WWE Championship from Monday Night Raw in July 1994. This match was one of the best first examples of how good a world champion Bret was in the mid-90s. Prepared to take on any challenger from wherever on the card, Hart went head-to-head with the future X-Pac, who was practically an underdog near the bottom of the card, save for a big upset win over Razor Ramon the previous year. Hart, as he did with many of his opponents, made Kid look like such a credible threat that actually had a chance of beating him, as Hart was the master of doing good business, which got everybody involved moreover. The fact that Hart sold for Kid and gave him some close, heart-wrenching near falls got the crowd to turn from booing Kid at the start of the match to be fully behind him by the end. Another testament to Hart's brilliance. Psychology was great from Hart as well, as he kept the pace slow, almost working like a heel, which would mean that Kid's eventual comeback would have even more fervency behind it and get him over even more. Bret also showed that he was still the fighting champion by asking for the match to be restarted when Kid's foot was in the rope off a 3 count. After the restart, Kid hit some gut-wrenching near falls, which added the great drama to the match and had the crowd aghast, thinking that Kid could actually leave as the WWE champion. Bret would obviously take the win with a sharpshooter, but a fantastic match that got everybody more over and showed just how great Bret could make his opponent look. Number 4, Bret Hart versus Mr. Perfect, King of the Ring semi-final in 1993. The rematch from their fantastic match at SummerSlam 1991, where Bret became the Intercontinental Champion, a match which also could have made this list. Their King of the Ring match was just a notch up, as Perfect was really banged up during their SummerSlam encounter, which took away slightly from what the two technicians could do. It's difficult for these two to have anything but a great match. Two absolute masters in technical wrestling and ring psychology, Bret and Perfect wrestled a highly competitive and believable match that was back and forth, making you believe that the struggle was real, which is something that you don't see a lot of these days. They also incorporated some brawling and strike exchanges to go with their brilliant technical grappling and elite psychology. The crowd responded in kind with a raucous response, especially during the closing stages. In the end, a really clever finish ensued as Bret countered Perfect's small package into one of his own and would go on to defeat Bam Bam Bigelow in the finals to win the 1993 King of the Ring. A big achievement for Bret. Number 3. Bret Hart versus British Bulldog for the Intercontinental Championship at SummerSlam 1992. This is arguably the best match in SummerSlam history and a true testament to just how good Bret was in the ring and how smart he was, knowing exactly what to do at any specific time. Of course, the 90,000 people inside Wembley Stadium cheering on their hometown boy Davey Boy Smith helped a lot with the feel and grandeur of the match. Bulldog was messed up in more ways than one and wasn't really in a fit state to wrestle the match. He couldn't remember what was supposed to happen, so Bret ended up carrying him through each and every move on the fly, which is a huge testament to how good Bret actually is, because the match ruled. Technically sound wrestling, big moves and close near falls kept everything going at a great pace, and Bret's mind has to be one of the absolute best in the history of wrestling. Entering the match as a babyface, however, knowing that Bulldog was the hometown hero, Bret started to work as a heel, as he knew that would get Bulldog more over and make his eventual comeback and finishing sequence mean that much more. Again, another great indictment of how much Bret would be willing to do to get somebody over. After 25 minutes of excellence, Bulldog made Wembley Stadium erupt with a sunset flip and was crowned the new Intercontinental Champion. Number 2, Bret Hart versus Owen Hart, WrestleMania 10. Brother versus brother. Two absolute geniuses between the ropes and two of the best technical wrestlers of all time clashing on the grandest stage of all. How could this match not be anything but awesome? The story here was excellent. Owen played the jealous younger brother, jealous of his older brother's success and the fact that Bret had already been and was about to become WWE Champion. It started at Survivor Series when Owen was the only member of the Hart team eliminated and he blamed Bret for it. Then at the Royal Rumble, the brothers lost their tag team championship match and Owen again blamed Bret. He turned into an entitled petty heel, which worked wonders for Owen's career. Bret didn't want to face him, but ultimately, after Owen's dastardly deeds, Bret had no option. This was their first ever encounter and it was one of the best matches in WrestleMania history. The technical wrestling was off the charts as both men utilised holds and submissions to try to ground their opponent down. They barely left the ring and showed exactly why they were two of the best in-ring performers of their generation and if not of all time. Owen played the heel perfectly here, celebrating every little advantage he got like a self-centered jerk, and some of his mannerisms were on point. And the result was a shocker, which elevates the match even more. Owen scored the pin after countering a Bret Hart victory roll, and Madison Square Garden was stunned. The absolute right result, as it was a bit of a pin out of nowhere, to which Bret didn't lose any credibility from, and the fact that Bret was going on in the main event to become WWE Champion. A star-making performance for Owen, and it showcased Bret's unbelievable technical wrestling skill. And number 1, Bret Hart versus Steve Austin in a submission match at WrestleMania 13. Could it have been anything else at top spot? What many people herald as the greatest match in WWE history, the bout between Bret Hart and Steve Austin is absolutely fabled in WrestleMania folklore. A rivalry which started at Survivor Series the previous year, a match that we mentioned above, which is also a classic. Bret and Austin were polar opposites and couldn't stand each other. Bret was the clean-cut babyface while Austin was the no F's given, anti-authority figure. But in 1997, WWE was getting a bit more edgy and the crowd wanted to see something different than that of Bret Hart. And they were quietly getting behind Austin. And it all came to a head in this match as the two beat the hell out of each other in a bloody, violent brawl as the two stars pulled out everything to try and get the other person to give up. Shamrock, as the special referee, also added legitimacy to the submission stipulation as he was a former UFC fighter. The visual of a bloody Austin trapped in the sharpshooter is absolutely iconic and one of the greatest visuals in company history. The Texas Rattlesnake refused to give up and ended up passing out from the pain, which declared Hart the victor. But Austin got so over from this because of his fortitude and refusal to give up, and this catapulted him to become arguably the biggest star in company history. in a period where WWE really needed one. And it turned the tide in the Monday Night Wars and may not have been possible without this match. Also, one of the rare double turns, and Austin left the match a defiant babyface and Hart a whiny heel, and it led to some fantastic character work from Bret in the latter stages of his career. None of this would have been possible without Hart. Well, there you have it. Those were our top 5 matches in the career of Bret Hart. Do you agree with our list? What were your favourite matches from the Hitman's career? Don't forget to like and subscribe to One Stop Wrestling on YouTube. And we'll see you next time for another One Stop Wrestling podcast.